Come, sit closer to the fire, and let me tell you a tale from centuries ago. A story about how the world began to share its knowledge like never before. Once, knowledge was a treasure held by the few. Books were copied painstakingly by hand, one page, one letter at a time. Only the wealthiest could afford them. The rest of the world, well, they could only dream of the ideas hidden in those fragile pages.
Then came a man named Johannes Gutenberg, a goldsmith from Germany. Around the year 1436, he began to tinker with a new way to make words appear on paper. Now, he was not the first to try. Long before him, in China, artisans had carved wood blocks to print books, and in Korea, people had used movable metal type a century earlier. But what Gutenberg created was different. He used a wine press, a screw-type press, to press ink letters onto paper evenly, over and over again.
With this simple yet brilliant invention, a new age quietly began. Books could be made faster, cheaper, and more widely than ever before. Ideas that had once been locked away in monasteries and palaces now traveled across towns, cities, and countries. Europe was waking up. Gutenberg's first great work was a Bible, printed in Latin. It took 3 long years to produce about 200 copies. Imagine that, in a world of hand-copied manuscripts, this was a marvel. Yet, Gutenberg himself never became wealthy. His presses were taken by creditors, and he died without seeing the full reach of his gift. But the fire of knowledge he lit could not be snuffed out. In Venice, a bustling city of trade and ships, printers began sending books far and wide. Sailors carried stories and news to distant ports. People who could not read gathered in taverns to hear readers recite the latest events, tales of far-off lands, scandals, and wars. In that simple act, the way people consumed news, learned about the world, and shared ideas changed forever. And so the Renaissance found new momentum. Scholars and wealthy patrons had long sought out ancient texts, from Plato to Aristotle, searching monasteries and foreign lands for lost knowledge. Before printing, such treasures were painstakingly copied by hand, often costing as much as a house. But with Gutenberg's press, books became more accessible. A teacher could buy a work by Cicero for a month's wages, and towns that had never seen a library now could hold one. The wisdom of the past was slowly reaching everyone, not just the elite. In time, the press gave a voice to those who had been silenced. Martin Luther, a man who questioned the church, published his writings far and wide. His 95 theses traveled from town to town, city to city, spreading ideas that could no longer be contained. Suddenly, one person's voice could echo across an entire continent. And science, too, was transformed. Mathematicians, astronomers, and philosophers could now share their findings with others far away, relying on printed tables and formulas rather than uncertain handwritten copies. The works of Copernicus, for instance, reached scholars who could build upon his ideas, moving humanity closer to the stars. Even the quietest voices found a stage. Radical thinkers, reformers, and critics of authority could now speak and be heard. Censorship became far more difficult. When a book was banned, people wanted it even more, curious about ideas that power sought to hide. By the Enlightenment, philosophers like Locke, Voltaire, and Rousseau reached wider audiences than ever before. People began to question tradition, to reason for themselves, to dream of liberty and justice. And even those who could not read could be swept up in the stories, as ideas traveled from the few literate to the many listeners. Finally, the press changed work itself. Scribes, who once spent their lives painstakingly copying manuscripts, found their old trade disappearing. Yet a new world opened up. Printers, booksellers, and messengers thrived, and entire industries were born. The gift Gutenberg left was greater than gold. It was the spark that lit the fire of knowledge across the world. And so, my friend, when you look at a book today, remember that centuries ago, a man in a dimly lit workshop, surrounded by ink and metal letters, began a quiet revolution, one that still shapes the way we see the world, even by the fire where we sit now.